the house on Blackwood Lane. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped into the house. It wasn't just the stale, musty air or the oppressive silence that lingered like an unwelcome guest. It was something deeper, something unseen. My skin prickled as I carried the first box into the foyer, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The house had been a steal, too good to pass up, really. A 3-story Victorian on the edge of town, tucked away on a forgotten stretch of Blackwood Lane. The previous owner had passed away, an old recluse with no family. The realtor had assured me it was simply a case of old age. Natural causes, she'd said with an awkward smile. But standing there in the dim light of my new home, I wasn't so sure. The first night was restless. The wind howled through the trees outside, branches tapping against the window like skeletal fingers. I kept hearing creaks and groans, the kind a house makes when it's settling, but these felt different, deliberate. I told myself it was just nerves. A new house always took some getting used to. Then came the whispers. At first, I thought I was imagining them, just the wind or maybe the pipes. But as the days passed, they grew more distinct, urgent. They slithered through the hallways at night, just outside my door. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, but the weight of unseen eyes pressing on me at all hours made sleep impossible. The worst part was the attic. The door was nailed shut when I moved in, but curiosity got the better of me. I pried the boards loose one evening, my heart hammering as I pulled the door open. The air inside was thick with dust, the scent of decay hanging heavy. A single warped window let in a sliver of moonlight, barely illuminating the space. And then I saw it. In the farthest corner, half buried beneath rotting boxes and moth-eaten blankets, sat a child's rocking chair. It creaked slightly, as if stirred by some unseen hand. My stomach twisted. Something about it felt wrong, deeply wrong. I backed away, slammed the door shut, and decided I would never go up there again. But the house had other plans. That night, I woke to the sound of the chair rocking. Not the wind, not my imagination. Rocking. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. It came from above me, from the attic. I lay frozen, my breath shallow. Then came the soft patter of footsteps. Light, almost playful, moving down the hallway toward my room. I bolted upright, my pulse a drumbeat in my ears. The doorknob rattled. I scrambled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with fear. The whispers started again, closer now, just outside my door. "Come play." The voice was high, childlike, but twisted, unnatural. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The door creaked open an inch, then another. My stomach lurched. The darkness beyond was absolute. And then I saw it. A small, pale hand reaching around the door frame. Too thin, too long. The fingers twitched, then gripped the wood, pulling the door open wider. I didn't wait. I launched out of bed, stumbling backward. My phone's flashlight flicked on, the beam landing on the figure just as it stepped into my room. It was a child, or at least it had once been. Its face was sunken, skin stretched taut over sharp bones. Its eyes, black, endless voids, locked onto mine, and a jagged grin spread across its face. "You opened the door," it whispered. The room plunged into darkness. The last thing I heard was the rocking chair upstairs, moving faster now, like laughter echoing through the walls. And then, silence. The house that remembers. I never believed in ghosts. Even after moving into the old house on Holloway Drive, I told myself the unease was just in my head. A new house always feels unfamiliar at first. Too quiet, too empty. I figured I'd get used to it, but the house had a way of making sure I never did. It started small. The first night, as I unpacked in the kitchen, I heard a faint tap, tap, tap from upstairs. It sounded like someone walking, but slower, too slow. I froze, listening. The house settled around me, groaning in the silence. When I finally worked up the nerve to check, I found nothing, just bare rooms and dusty floors. I told myself it was just the old wood shifting under its own weight. Houses make noises, nothing to be afraid of. But the next morning I woke up to something strange. All of my unpacked books, ones I had stacked neatly on the living room floor, were arranged in a perfect circle. In the center sat an old, cracked photograph. It hadn't been there before. It was a picture of the house, but something was off. The windows were darker, like empty eye sockets. And in the upstairs window, barely visible, was a shadowy figure. I didn't touch the photograph. I should have left right then, but I was stubborn. It's just a prank, I told myself. Some kid sneaking in, trying to scare me. I reset the books, shoved the photo in a drawer, and tried to shake the feeling of unseen eyes watching me. That night, I dreamed of the house, but in my dream, it wasn't empty. I stood in the upstairs hallway, facing a door that shouldn't exist. The air was thick, heavy, buzzing like static. The door handle was ice cold under my fingers. I didn't want to open it, but my hand moved on its own. Inside, the walls pulsed like a living thing, and in the center of the room stood a woman. Her back was to me, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Her hair was matted, dripping with something dark. She whispered something, but I couldn't understand. Then she turned. Her face, what was left of it, was twisted with something between rage and sorrow. Her mouth stretched too wide, her eyes hollow pits. I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. But the worst part wasn't the dream. The worst part was my bedroom door. It was open. I had locked it before bed. I was sure of it. For the first time, I admitted to myself that I wasn't alone in the house. The next day, I found the photograph again. It was on my nightstand. But now, the shadowy figure in the window was closer, as if it had moved, as if it was watching me. I packed my bags that night. I didn't care about breaking the lease. Whatever was in this house didn't want me here. As I stepped out the front door, I turned back one last time. And in the upstairs window, I saw her. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light. She was there, watching me leave. And she was smiling. The house at Black Hollow. I knew something was wrong the moment I stepped inside. The house smelled stale, like wood left to rot. Dust hung thick in the air, swirling in the dim light filtering through the heavy curtains. The real estate agent had called it a fixer-upper, but there was something in the silence, in the way the floorboards creaked under my weight, that made me feel like the house itself was watching me. I bought it cheap, too cheap. A sprawling Victorian on the outskirts of Black Hollow, abandoned for years, waiting for someone like me. I told myself the unease was just my imagination, that the isolation was what I needed. A fresh start. That first night, the house settled with long, groaning sighs, like an old man shifting in his chair. I lay awake in my mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind whisper through cracks in the wood. Then something else, a faint shuffling sound. At first, I thought it was mice. I got up, flashlight in hand, and followed the sound down the hallway. My footsteps felt too loud in the hush of the house. The noise led me to a door I hadn't noticed before, hidden beneath the grand staircase. The handle was ice cold as I twisted it. Locked. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence. I convinced myself it was nothing and went back to bed. But the next night the sound came again, shuffling, scraping. This time I was ready. I pried open the door with a crowbar, the lock giving way with a brittle snap. A set of stairs descended into darkness. The air that rose from below smelled damp and sour. I should have left it alone. Holding my flashlight out in front of me, I crept downward. The beam flickered over stone walls, crumbling shelves, and an old wooden workbench. Then the light caught something else. Scratches, deep, jagged grooves along the stone floor, as if something had been dragged. My stomach clenched. Then I heard breathing. Ragged, shallow breaths. Close. The flashlight sputtered, and for a second I saw it. A figure in the corner, hunched and twisted, limbs too long, face obscured in the dark. The light went out. I scrambled backward, heart hammering. The air felt thick, pressing against me. The breathing grew louder, closer. My fingers fumbled against the wall, searching for the stairs. Then, silence. The flashlight flickered back on. The corner was empty. I bolted upstairs, slamming the door shut, shoving the heaviest piece of furniture I could find in front of it. My hands were shaking. My breath came in ragged gasps. Sleep was impossible. I sat awake until dawn, every creak of the house setting my nerves on edge. When morning came, I tried to convince myself it was my mind playing tricks. Maybe it was an animal. Maybe the darkness made it seem worse than it was. But then I saw the scratches on the inside of the door. Fresh. I didn't stay another night. I packed a bag, locked the front door behind me, and left without looking back. The house at Black Hollow could keep its secrets.